Ayurveda School's Foundations of Ayurveda course. In this module, we're going to look at another foundational principle of Ayurvedic theory. This is a theory that we have 4 goals of life. And as David Frawley says, in order for a life to be fully lived, all 4 goals must be realized. So let's look at these 4 goals. We're going to find that they're closely linked to our natural instincts. And there's a slight difference because these are looked at, we have an instinct to live, and the goal is to allow that instinct to be expressed. So our first, kama, pursuit of pleasure. We have the instinct to live. Our goal then is to fully express this instinct and find pleasure in the creation. In artha, we have a natural instinct to earn. The goal then is to be able to earn as we're living this life. Dharma is the desire to live out our life's purpose. We saw our instinct was to do virtuous acts. When we live out our life purpose, we have our service to other people. We uplift all of creation. So when we can fully realize this goal of Dharma, we are following that natural instinct to its logical conclusion. Moksha is the goal of liberation. It frees us from this human form. It frees us from our attachment to all of these goals. So as we look at these each in more detail, we'll come to understand where the goal is important to you. How do you express this goal? Which of these goals might be most important to you? And how will you recognize that? The first goal we look at is kama, pursuit of pleasure. And in the picture, it looks like they're having a good time. Kama is often looked at as a goal of childhood. Children play and they learn through play. They find pleasure in their experiences. They indulge in sensory exploration of the world and they find joy in that. So kama is a fundamental goal that we live when we recognize the pleasure in this moment. That we're able to be in the present moment and experiencing it with our senses and find a contentment and a pleasure in that. Kama, as a goal, may be experienced differently by different people. Some people will find sitting in meditation for hours pleasurable. For other people, it would not be a pleasure. Some people like to take long hikes with heavy packs on their backs. They find that pleasurable. Other people would not find that pleasurable. So every time we are looking at working with this goal of kama, we have to realize that for every individual, that goal will be a little bit different. I have a friend who likes to go snow camping. That does not sound pleasurable to me. I have another friend who likes to sit and knit. My friend who snow camps would not find that pleasurable. So we find, how is it that I find joy in this moment? How is it that I feel connected to the present moment through my sensory experience? The natural instinct that is linked here is our desire to live. When I am invested in living, when I'm invested in experiencing this present moment, then I experience kama. We find joy in our activities and recognize that what's pleasurable for me may not be pleasurable for you. So I can't define what is kama for you. I had an instructor in college who worked 6 months out of the year so that he could make enough money to travel for the remaining 6 months. His focus, his goal in life was primarily kama and pleasure, because for him, the traveling was the most pleasurable thing. I had other instructors who looked and thought this was a terrible way for him to live his life. But for him, because the goal of kama was so important, he had to focus time, energy, and attention on meeting that goal. We can, with these goals, as we could with our instincts, pay so much attention to the goal that we disregard everything else in our life. If I over-attach to the goal of kama, if this becomes the overriding principle in my life to which everything else must take a back seat, I could leave myself destitute, devoid of life purpose, and devoid of a spiritual practice. So if I think of an experience where I might do that, imagine that I like the music of a certain band. So I decide that I must quit my job, leave my home and my family to travel around the world to follow this band. I spend all the money that I have ever accumulated, and every dime I get fuels my work of being able to follow this band around. The band becomes my deity. The band becomes the focus. I only find pleasure when I'm listening to the music of that band. Well, think how narrow that experience of life has become. There's only one band's music I want to listen to. All of my money is going towards this one project that I've got to follow the band around. My self-care will suffer because will set aside everything. Self-care, care of other, virtuous acts, everything goes by the wayside so that I can pursue this thing that I have deemed as the most pleasurable thing. So typically when I overindulge in the goal of kama, I get excess sensory stimulation. I neglect self-care. This can lead me to exhaustion. And if I continue to desire to seek out more kama, I may get into addiction. Because when I am exhausted, I'll need something that's going to keep me moving forward. And if I don't provide something from the inside through my food and my sleep and my exercise, I'm going to reach for outside substances to do it. And at the end, I will have no joy at all. I won't find pleasure in the music. I won't find pleasure in my travels. I will be exhausted. So the goal of kama is to be able to experience joy in the creation without so attaching to the pleasure that I forget to see all of the creation that exists around me. We run a risk with these goals of giving all our time and attention to just one, and when we do so, the others suffer. And remember, in order for the life to be well lived, all four must be realized. I mentioned before that kama is kind of a goal of childhood. Kids want to do what is pleasurable, and they don't want to do what is boring or painful. Other adults kind of say, I will deal with the boredom so I can get to the pleasure later. But so oftentimes we have a goal of kama in childhood. We learn through play, and so it's not a negative thing, but there is that recognition that we may grow out of it. We may grow into find that there are pleasurable things, but there's also a time where we want to focus on artha. Artha is the pursuit of wealth. If I go from that concept of kama is a part of childhood, we hit our late teens, early adulthood, and it becomes all about the artha. I want to have enough money that I can provide for the things that I want. In its ultimate sense, the goal of artha is about having enough that I can provide for myself, put food on my table, a roof over my head, and possibly provide for a family as well. So with artha, it's very closely linked with our instinct to earn. When I earn, I feel worthy. When I earn, I have enough. I can provide for myself, and I can provide for others as well. What is wealth is also different to different people. For some people, wealth is being able to have today's food on the table. For other people, they need to have cupboards full of food. For yet other people, they're going to have their whole garage filled up with food, and they don't feel wealthy. They don't have enough until they have boxes and pallets full of food. For some people, having enough money to pay their mortgage this month is enough. For others, they want to have enough to pay it for the year. With others, they want to make sure that there is some way they've got money coming in all the time. So even after they pay their mortgage, there's still plenty of money left. So just like with kama, there are different levels of artha that we feel comfortable with. If I become overly attached to the goal of artha, then the only thing important to me is making more money. The challenge here is the more money I make, the bigger my bank needs to be, the bigger my safe needs to be, and I begin to, kind of have to protect this. I think people are trying to take my money. So now instead of making sure I have enough for myself and others, I have enough for myself and my family, and I'm going to amass as much as I can for some future tragedy, some future disaster that might be coming up. So when I overattach to Artha, there is never enough. I always need more. And that will lead me to greed. That can lead me to envy and to avarice. Avarice is an interesting concept. It's not only do I envy you, I want to take what you have. I don't feel like you deserve it. I want it. So when my goal is money, then only money is important. If I'm a person for whom Artha is most important, then I want to make sure, I tend to put a lot of focus on the work I do and making sure it's really well paid. Because this is how I'm going to feel worthy. When I have a lot of zeros in my bank account, then I know that I am doing well. I'm prepared. I am safe. Artha is often a goal of Pitta nature because they often equate financial success with success in life. And because they're more competitive, success is very important to them. So as we look at the goal of Artha, you might assess your own relationship with Artha. Are you always struggling? Does it seem like as soon as you make money, you spend it for something fun? Then your goal is Kama, not really Artha. If you're one of those people who makes money and you know exactly how much money you have all the time and exactly where it is, you save up for things and you buy those things, then your goal may be Artha. Again, there is no shame in having one of these goals be your primary goal, but you want to make sure that you're balanced between them. So that maybe what you're doing is saving some money for something fun, as well as saving your money to have money in the bank, as well as saving your money to perform virtuous acts. In this case, they call it Dharma. Dharma is the goal of pursuit of your life's purpose. If Kama, as pleasure, pursuit of pleasure, was service to yourself, Artha was service to your family, Dharma is service to society. The quote here, as I said earlier, was the meaning of life is to find your gift. The purpose of life is to give it away. This is a very Dharma-driven statement. When we pursue our Dharma, we want to do the work we came to do. Maybe that was to teach, maybe it was to act, maybe it was to dance, maybe it was to lead. Your Dharma is a part of your nature, a part of your life's work that is not defined necessarily by your occupation. So we look at our goal here. The goal of Dharma, that should say instinct. The goal of Dharma is to fulfill your life's purpose. The instinct it's related to is the desire to perform virtuous acts. Our Dharma, our purpose, is a way of uplifting ourselves and uplifting our community. It aligns us with what is our highest purpose. You may be able to find an occupation in which you can express your Dharma, but you may not. My best example of someone living dharmically is there was a doctor here in town. Now doctors, many doctors are focused on Artha. They find a way, they have an occupation which makes a lot of money. And this man was happy to be doing his work as a doctor and making a lot of money. He also had a degree of Kama and he liked to travel. So in the summer he would travel. And when he was in his 40s, he took a trip to Africa. While he was in Africa, what he saw so stirred him. He visited an orphanage in there, and he saw how poor the medical facilities were for caring for these children. He came back here, he closed up his business, and for 6 months out of the year, he runs a medical center in the community in Africa that he saw during his travels. The other 6 months of the year, he comes back to the US and he makes money to go back and makes money to fund what he's doing in Africa the other 6 months of the year. Does he find pleasure in his work? Yes. Does he have enough? Is there food on his table and a roof over his head and he's well taken care of financially? Yes. Is he following what he believes to be his life's purpose? Yes. So this is an example of someone who is living dharmically, and meeting the other goals of kama and artha. He's uplifting a community, and his example uplifts other people. His desire to follow his dharma allows other people to follow their own as well. Another man I know, his dharma was more to dance. I knew him, he was an adult in our community, and he was an accountant. He was a very straight-laced man, but he and his wife loved to dance. He achieved artha through his work. He raised his family. His children were grown. They moved out of the house. And he came home one day and said he was quitting his job and he was going to become a ballroom dance instructor. To this day, 20 years later, he's still a ballroom dance instructor, and I have never seen anyone happier. Does he find joy in that? Yes. Does it bring him artha? Not as much as being an accountant did. However, as he defines it, he needed the money when he had a family to raise. Once his children were raised, he did not need as much money. So he was happy to let go of the high salary to have enough. So yes, he has artha. And he's following what is his life's purpose. Now we might look and say, well, that's not like being a doctor in an orphanage. Our assessment of someone's dharma is not important. Their assessment of their dharma is. You're going to be working with new moms. They're taking on a dharma, a life purpose of being a mother to this infant. You are taking a dharma, a service to uplift, to perform a virtuous act by being there in the presence of this and supporting the mother and the infant. As an ayodhula, you serve dharma. There may be other aspects of your life that are dharmically driven as well. So you want to consider, how important is dharma to you? How strongly do you align with your life's purpose? I found out how important dharma was to me when I took a long trip. I took a trip for about 7 months with my family to travel. And during that time, I didn't work. And I struggled with that so much because although it was fun and I had kama, and although we had enough money, we had artha, I was sad because I was not able to work. I wasn't able to do my dharma. And I found now that when I travel, I try to line up somewhere that I can speak or some writing I can do or some way that I can stay in connection with what I perceive as my dharma to teach Ayurveda. So I encourage you to look at your life and assess where you stand with dharma. I heard it said one time that if you watched a child playing at the age of 3, you would do a better job of assessing their dharma than you do as their adults. Because when we're children, we're drawn to those things that are our life's purpose. Some children are artists at 3, others are builders. I was a teacher. I put my animals in chairs and I started talking to them. One person I know is a practitioner. He said he would pretend to be a doctor and he would put bandages on his stuffed animals. So think back to that time or look at your own children and think, how reflective of this? What kind of dharma is this play showing? Now, as I said, your life purpose might be your occupation. If you're lucky, you'll earn money for it. But it could be anything you do that you feel is performing a virtuous act and uplifting all of society. We can become over-attached to this as well and do the action not because it's our life purpose, but because we want the status or the approval of other people. In that case, we become overly attached to the idea of dharma rather than being attached to our actual expression of dharma. The fourth goal is moksha, the pursuit of liberation. We have an innate drive to be free of this physical body, to get back into connection with ourselves as consciousness, with ourselves as divine. So for those people interested in Ayurveda, coming in to be Ayodhulas, you probably have a strong call to dharma, but you may also have a strong call to moksha. You may have a very strong spiritual life, which calls you to look beyond this body, beyond this mind, what is the truth all around you. In moksha, we express all the instincts to serve our purpose of liberation. We find pleasure in those practices we do, our spiritual practices, the rituals and rites that we do that we see as being aligned with moksha and liberation. We don't find ourselves so very attached to artha and money, except as it may fuel our work towards moksha. And we may live our dharma seeing that that helps us to align with our highest purpose, helps us to align with our highest self. And the more we align with that highest self, the more we free ourselves from bondage to the physical body and mind. We let go of our attachments. I remember noticing as my mother aged how much things that she had placed such high value on she was giving away without a second thought. It became unimportant to her, all the possessions she had surrounded herself with. So in moksha, we liberate ourselves from all these attachments. It begins with losing attachments to things, but it can go to losing attachments to people or places, that we no longer see such a strong connection to this physical experience. In moksha, we have liberation, we have enlightenment, and we have spiritual evolution. Now, this can be any form this takes. All paths lead to center. So as we go deeper and deeper with our spiritual practices, the desire to pursue those spiritual practices is driven by moksha, the goal of moksha. If we become overly attached to moksha, then we're going to separate from this life and we're not going to have any other experiences. And we can get into what's called spiritual egoism. My path is right, but not yours. I could find enlightenment, but not you. I remember coming off of a meditation retreat. It was a 10-day silent meditation retreat. And I was very excited about this new meditation that I had discovered. And I was invited to a Buddhist meditation group by a friend. And so I showed up at the group and I was greeted at the door and someone asked me about my history in meditation. And I told them that I had just been on this fantastic meditation experience and I really enjoyed it. And he looked at me kind of kindly and said, "Oh yes, many people like that type of meditation, but it's never going to get you enlightened." And for me, I thought, how funny, because all types of meditation are going to bring you closer to source, closer to center, and help you to see the difference between the physical reality and the spiritual reality. So that's what I call spiritual egoism. My path is correct, and only people who follow my path are going to be the ones that get enlightened. We might also have false liberation. We can see this sometimes in yogis or other people who will project and believe themselves to be enlightened while they're still very much involved in worldly pursuits. They often get caught in some kinds of scandals. So as we look at these goals, kama, pursuit of pleasure, artha, pursuit of wealth, dharma, the pursuit of your life's purpose, and moksha, pursuit of liberation, we can look at these and have all four of them realized. At the very least, look at three of them being realized: dharma, artha, and moksha, and kama. Moksha is a little bit trickier because you have to be ready to let go of this life. So as we look at these practices, these principles, we can look at our own lives and see how well realized am I in pleasure. Do I find my life pleasurable, or am I very stressed all the time? Do I find it pleasurable, or am I angry all the time? If I'm having a problem where I don't find my life pleasurable, then I want to say, what can I do? And we will be talking about what you can do from an Ayurvedic perspective in order to get your body healthy enough and your mind stable enough so that you will be really able to pursue these goals. With artha, you look at how much is my focus on money? How could I make sure I have enough? How do I have enough for myself and my family and enough for whatever I view for my future? But then am I able to transform that into virtuous acts? Can I take that extra and spread it around a little bit and see it going out to my communities in a way that I could be fulfilling my life's purpose, my dharma? And at the end of all of that, how do I liberate myself from all of this? How do I free myself from each of these different goals and all these attachments that I have to physical life? This brings us to an end of Module 2 for Sacred Window School's Foundations of Ayurveda course. At this time, you'll want to set aside the videos. You can go back and rewatch them if you want, but you'll want to pay attention to the text companion for Module 2 and completing any assignments, meeting with your mentor, and making sure that you've completed Modules 1 and 2 before going on to Module 3. In Module 3, we'll begin to look at Ayurvedic biology. We're going to start with the 5 elements, their qualities, look at the 3 doshas in more detail in light of those elements and qualities, and then go into the tissues of the body. So it's a really exciting section. It gets us really into the earth of Ayurvedic practice. We've been up in the ether of the practice, kind of the space of the practice, where it all comes from, these spaces. So enjoy your research, enjoy your assignments, and I look forward to seeing you in Module 3.